Are you facing a difficult or challenging decision? If so, here are some techniques that may be helpful. Stay tuned. Hello, friends. Pastor Tim Westermeyer here, Senior Pastor at St. Philip the Deacon in the western suburbs of Minneapolis. It's good to be with you, as always. A couple weeks ago, I got an email from an old friend. One of the privileges of the work I do is that sometimes people will reach out to me for counsel or advice, and I am always deeply humbled and honored to be invited into a moment of, let's call it, discernment or making a difficult choice. So this individual, an old friend of mine, had a circumstance come up in his life, and he was just saying, can you help me think about how I should approach this? And it reminded me again of something I think we talked about a very long time ago, but I want to lift it up again just because this event again prompted it in my head, of a chapter from this book, The Jesuit Guide to Almost Everything, by Father James Martin, who himself is a Jesuit. And again, the chapter is called simply, What Should I Do? It includes a lot more than I'm going to mention in this brief episode, and I would commend it to you. I've actually suggested or recommended this chapter to many people over the years who are sitting with some kind of a choice they have to make. It's filled with all kinds of wonderful thought experiments and practical ideas. I want to lift up just 3 or 4 of them from what Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit order, calls the second method. So 3 of them come from Ignatius. 1 of them comes from James Martin himself. So the first option, again, let's imagine you're facing a decision, a choice of some kind, and you're struggling with it. First thing you might try to do is imagine a person I've never seen or known, and imagine what advice you would give to this person regarding the same decision you are facing. So again, part of what makes decisions difficult sometimes is that our own egos are wrapped up in it, or we're too close to it. So if you can imagine sort of another individual, same circumstance, same situation, just put yourself in the position not of having to make the decision, but of counseling someone having to make the decision, and see if that frees you up to think about the decision in a more objective way. Okay, so that's the first suggestion. Second option, and again, this comes from Ignatius, so Father Martin is quoting or lifting up Ignatius's ideas. Second, says Ignatius, you can imagine yourself at the point of death. And as Father Martin immediately says, that can sound morbid, I know, but it is also clarifying. Think of yourself on your deathbed, far into the future, and imagine asking yourself, what should I have done? Right? And as Father Martin goes on to say, part of the power of this method is in that old cliche, because it's true, that people on their deathbed never think, oh, well, I wish I would have spent more time at the office, right? At your deathbed, presumably, and this I think is borne out in history, people have sort of a different kind of clarity about what was important and what wasn't important in their life. So if you fast forward to that point and put yourself there imaginatively, it may, again, give you a different kind of perspective on the choice or decision you're having to make right now. Third one is kind of related to that. And what he suggests is, third, we can imagine ourselves at the last judgment. So not on your deathbed, but facing Jesus at your own last judgment, and recognizing, and we hinted in the last episode, sort of the power of being in the presence of the good and the true and the beautiful, and the presence of the God we worship, and making us realize how sinful we are. So similar kind of dynamic. You're there at the last judgment, and maybe this decision you're about to make comes up in that interchange, in that conversation. Yeah, you might imagine God at the end of your life being, let's say, sad or happy about whichever decision you did or didn't make. So again, it's a thought experiment that allows you to get a different kind of perspective. I said this in an episode a long time ago, but just a reminder that Ignatius of Loyola started his career as a general or someone in the army in Spain. So he was a very practical person, and that comes through in all of these kind of thought experiment he suggests. They're not sort of pie in the sky, ethereal. They're very sort of practical exercises you can try. And for me, I think all three of those are really helpful. And then the fourth is the one that Father Martin suggests, which is sort of an extension of them all. And so what he says is, let me add an additional suggestion to those of Ignatius, a fourth technique. Imagine what your best self would do, right? And again, he's getting at here, as Christians, we believe and trust and confess yes, that we are sinful, fallen human beings, but we are sinful, fallen human beings who are loved by God, and that love and forgiveness we receive from God should free us to, among other things, make better choices than we might make without that love, without that forgiveness. So, give yourself some credit here and try to imagine yourself as the best example of yourself that God has made, and again, sort of perceive what that best self would do in this circumstance. I hope that's kind of helpful. If you are making a decision, maybe those are useful tools. I want to be very clear about this, if you have other suggestions about exercises or thought experiments you've used to make decisions, would you please share them? And the other thing I will mention is, as Christians, I think one of the most powerful things we can do is talk with other people who are close to us. And as I mentioned at the outset of this episode, I find it an incredible honor and privilege to be on the receiving end of people coming to me looking for counsel and advice. And I pray that in your own life, you might have the vulnerability to share something you're struggling with someone you love and someone you know. And I also pray that maybe if you're on the receiving end of that you will be able to share God's love through words of wisdom and counsel and love to the person coming to you. That's it for today. As always, be well, stay in touch, and God bless.